Welcome. Oh, let's see. There it goes. Welcome back to the overnight. Welcome again to part 3 of today's From Day 1. As always, we'll grab the mailbag, and I do have a little bit of paperwork I have to take care of for you all. Seems I listened after the fact that the show was recorded last night. Unfortunately, it seems I've had a bad master copy of Art Bell's interview with Father Michael Maginot, which had some noises that probably should not have been there. So I did go out and resource different master of the item, so that way we can still have our enjoyment tonight to finish the rest of the interview with Father Michael Maginot. And I also rewind the tape to the point where that noises were, so we could go ahead and have the rest of the interview in its entirety. So without further ado, while we fight in Dominion, including everything else like Dungeon and everything else, here again is Art Bell and Father Michael Maginot from October 1st, 2015, talking about exorcisms.
It really is.
Yeah. And so I went to see if there were, if they were just then they were wet. So I felt it. It was wet. I could smear it. And then I was looking where it came from because I go, where did these? I don't remember seeing these before.
Right.
So I was because I was in the kitchen, I was in the bathroom, but they were just around her. So I was wondering if I made if I stepped in a puddle or something. And was tracking this through the house and happened to, but I don't even remember walking around Latoya that way. I was always going back to my chair, but it was just around her. It wasn't out the door, wasn't out, it was just these wet, and they just appeared. I don't remember seeing them before, so I then made a note of that, and then all of a sudden she said she's shivering. She's real cold, and so she went into her bedroom to get a blanket, and she put it around her, and says, "Okay, let's talk about the boyfriend." Then all of a sudden she throws off the blanket, so she's burning up, and then all of a sudden she said, "Oh, I have a headache," and then at that point I said, "Do you mind if I put my crucifix on your forehead?" And she said, "Okay." And so I put it on her forehead, and she began convulsing. And I took it off immediately, and she stopped convulsing. And I said, "Oh, I think you're possessed. You have an aversion to holy objects." And she kind of sheepishly...
When you say convulse...
yeah. It's like she went through like a seizure. She's just shaking.
Okay.
And then she would stop when I took it off. And then I asked Rosa if I could do the same to her. And she gave me permission. I could put it on her, Rosa, and there was no problem. And she said, so she was kind of the one least affected by all this. But I said, well, I think, and at that point I looked at my watch and I saw it was 10:30. And I said, okay. I think I have enough here, but I have to get to the bottom with the boyfriend. The key is the boyfriend. So, and then we could probably do that over the phone. And so we, and they went, we closed up the house and they went back to, with her brother and such.
Yeah, I think I'd want to do that on the phone too.
And so the next day, Rosa calls me and says, "Latoya's very sick, but she wanted to mention something that happened that night, because they were sleeping in the same room, and so Rosa was awakened in the middle of the night, and she saw that her feet were uncovered by the blankets, and so she tried to kind of kick, the bedding back over her feet. And as she was about ready to fall asleep, she all of a sudden noticed that the bedding was coming off of Latoya's feet, and that also woke up LaToya. And so I was kind of saying, there seems to be something with feet here. So, if that makes any sense to you. And so LaToya called me the next day, and she says, that reminded me of something. The first time I met my boyfriend was that I was missing, and I never thought of this until then, that I was missing. I got a brand new pair of Air Jordans for women, and all of a sudden they were missing. I couldn't find them anywhere. And she was asking her kids, did anyone take her Air Jordans? And they all denied it. And she asked her mother, she says, what would I do with, Air Jordans? And she, and she couldn't find it, anywhere. So she was kind of surprised. And then she wanted to make a picture of the family and enlarge it. So she went through her stack of pictures and was looking for that picture she wanted to enlarge. And she also noticed other pictures missing of individuals in the family as well. And then she went again to all the family members and asked them, who took these pictures. Now she was getting angry. She says, people are stealing things, they're lying and everything. Now this is when her boyfriend just moved in. And then the first night he was there, he said something strange to her. He asked her for her underwear. And he says, what do you want that? And she says, I want to remember this evening, And he says, well, you're sick. You're crazy. You're not going to have that. So then I asked her, did he take that? And, was it missing? She says, well, I have so many pairs. I don't know if he took it. I didn't give it to him, but he may have taken it, but I wouldn't have known.
Right.
But it was just a suggestion of it. So I said, oh, okay. So it looks like, yeah, he did some sort of, especially when you left him, he was doing some sort of curse on you and perhaps on the kids as well. And so we kind of saw the boyfriend as being
the bad guy,
the bad, the one who brought
the
in
initiator. Yeah.
But it also seemed there was something else in the house because later on, I think that Wednesday too.
Father, again, I'm sorry, we're at a short break. So hold that thought, and then you can describe the ultimate exorcism, right?
Sure.
Oh, what a case, right? I'm Mark, and this is Midnight in the Desert.
And again, we'll return to that when the audio bumper is over. And again, I don't know why, but Nexters decided to shrink us during that fight, so we are back to full screen.
Said Mike, if on a computer, and call MITD 55. That's MITD 55.
All right, everybody. Father Michael Maginot is my guest, and my good Lord, what a story. All kinds of activity. Children walking up walls, children thrown into things, blood coming unexpectedly from the children, things moving in the house, the concept of the idea that for a while it was a haunted house, the efforts to deal with that, and then apparently the realization that this was an outside influence, mainly the boyfriend. And Father, so you had all of this documentation from medical professionals, what you had witnessed yourself, the family's testimony. So at some point, who do you go to try to get authorization to do an exorcism?
Yeah, to my bishop.
To your bishop. Was that a hard sell?
Yeah, because he never gave authorization before, so there was no exorcist in the diocese to go to,
Right.
and so none of us had any training, and so he asked me to contact nearby ones in the Archdiocese of Chicago and the Archdiocese of Indianapolis.
Sure.
And to how to deal with that. And so they kind of gave me a quick lesson. Mainly I needed a ritual, and at that time there was no ritual because there was a little bit of a concern. They recently revised the rite, and many of the exorcists were complaining about the new rite being not as effective. And so the Pope Benedict at that time gave permission to do the old rite, and they're going to, the church will look at the revised rite and maybe go back to the old one. So the only
question for you, Father. I mean, you've been a priest a very long time, but you're a novice, certainly, at exorcisms.
Yes.
Didn't you go into this with trepidation yourself?
Yeah, because I didn't have, but there was kind of nowhere else to go. Because you're kind of the cop on the duty,
right?
On duty, and it's your, I couldn't hand it off to anyone.
So you moved to the old, you got permission, and then you moved to the old rite, the old way of doing it.
Actually, I tried the new one. So they said, there is no ritual right now. You have to get it off the internet. And because no one's printing anything until they settle how we're going to do this.
I see.
So I would do the new rite in English for the first two exorcisms, but I found the most effective one was the old rite in Latin, and that was the last one, which actually took care.
Did you during the time that I assume that you went into a room with the children by yourself, or how did you do this?
No, I was just going to take care of LaToya first.
Okay.
And as it turned out, once I took care of LaToya, it also cleared from the children as well.
I see. So through the boyfriend to LaToya to the children during this exorcism.
No, actually, I never did the boyfriend.
No, I understand, but I'm tracing.
Tracing. Okay.
How this happened. You did the detective work, so from the boyfriend to LaToya, and then on to the children is the way it was working. Once you got it out of LaToya, did you meet anything during this exorcism? Can you describe it in any way, or are you prohibited from doing that?
Some things I'm prohibited, but the first exorcism, first of all, what the exorcists from Indy and Chicago recommended is that I do a minor exorcism first, which is basically the rite without the bishop's permission. And if that works, great. If not, then you have to get the bishop's permission. So It's always good to try it once.
Okay.
And so I did that, and mainly the sign for LaToya was, she would convulse and when I put the crucifix on her. So when we got to that part of the rite, on doing that, she would convulse. And what you're trying to do is to aggravate it so that it would leave, or weaken it so that it would dissipate. But one thing you don't want it to do is to be consistent, because it's not bothering it that much, and you're actually hurting the person. And that's what was kind of happening during the minor rite of exorcism. I'll put the crucifix on her head. I'll probably keep it there maybe for 30 seconds or so, and there was no change. She was continual convulsion. Then I would take it off, and then she would stop. And I did that 3 times, and it was the same. So it really was not effective.
Father, you're going to have to excuse me, but I've only seen movies, and in the movies they use holy water.
Yeah. Now, holy water didn't seem to bother her.
Really?
Okay, so it was religious objects. But there's all kinds of things. So that was basically the only thing that was bothering her. So we would go through the whole rite. Now you only go through the rite once when you're doing a minor exorcism. So
Right.
that was the only reaction. And so I mentioned that to the bishop, and so he did give me permission. And so we set up for the first. Now that one was done in the house, and so we're going to do the major exorcism in the church, my church.
Oh.
And so we had everyone there, and we went through the whole rite one time. And when I got to the point of putting the crucifix on her forehead, she was fine. No reaction. Wow. And so it was like gone.
So you were not harmed in any way during any of this?
No, it was kind of surprising. Now she could, so we thought, oh, that was simple.
Yes.
I think everyone else that was there was kind of, well, that's, that was easy. So they were really expecting a lot. And then, so she could wear, so we gave her a crucifix. She could put it on before she couldn't stand anything
right.
Religious on her.
Right.
And one of my assistants gave her what's known as a Benedictine rosary, which is Benedictine metals like a rosary.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a big, huge rosary here. And so she took that. And she got in her car and drove away. And so we were kind of walking across the parking lot, thinking, "Wow, that was easy." Yes. And then all of a sudden, we see something shiny on the ground, on the parking lot asphalt, and it was a couple pieces of the rosary, that Benedictine rosary. And then we saw another piece of it, and another piece. So it's like spreads. So it's like 5, 6 different pieces, and so we picked them all up, made sure we had the whole thing.
Yes.
And the person that was going to, that gave it to her was going to put it back together, and so we kind of said, I don't think this is over. And so Latoya called the next day, and she wanted to know where that big rosary was. She put it in her purse and drove away, and then when she got home, she looked in the purse and she couldn't find it. She looked all over her car and she didn't know. And I said, yeah, it ended up all over the parking lot, over the parking lot where you left. But it was torn to pieces, and we're putting it back together. And so I asked her, this is not over, and since nothing really happened, we're going to have a little bit of a problem, because if we do this again, it's going to be kind of ineffective. We need to get the name of that demon.
Yes, sir.
And she remembered, this may be helpful. She said that when her church wouldn't help her, she decided to go online to find out how to get rid of demons.
Yes.
But she didn't have a computer, so she went to her friend's computer, and so she looked up a website, and it gave a whole list of demons. And she looked at one that described exactly what was happening to her children. And when she went to look at the name, the computer went off. And so she had to turn it back on,
right,
and then get back on the website, on the internet, back onto the website, find the web page. And again, she went down and looked for the description. And when she went to look at the name again, the second time it went out. Now, this time her friend says, "You're not putting your demons in my computer. It's time to go home." And then that friend had like a headache for 2 weeks and wouldn't speak to her at all. It had nothing to do with her. And I said, "Oh, okay. So maybe what we could do is, give me the name of that website. What I could do is print it up, the list, and then you point out the name, and
right,
then it won't be able to mess it up."
There you go.
And so we set up for the following Friday to do the next exorcism, number 2. And so I didn't want to have that list around too long, but Friday was very busy for me, so we were going to do the exorcism in the afternoon, but I was busy all the way to then. And Thursday's my day off, and so I usually on my day off, it was a beautiful day that day was to go for a bike ride.
Yes, sir.
And so about an hour before I would go on my bike ride, I was trying to, print out that list. And I was doing everything possible. It would not let me print it out, and trying all kinds of games and everything. And then finally, about an hour later, it printed out, and it was time for my bike ride. And so, and this is probably the most I ever experienced, this particular demon. So the bike ride starts out, and it is a beautiful day, and something was happening that I never see happen before. I was going through my neighborhood, and I was then kind of on the other side of the street, but someone, across the street there would just be so exuberant and say, "Hi, how's it going? Isn't it a beautiful day?" And go down a couple more houses, and someone else, whatever they were out there doing, they would have the same kind of reaction. And, and then I went, still, I think a third place, a neighbor was, and I don't even know these people. And, they, just saying, "Oh, isn't it, what a great day for you to go on a bike ride." Really strange, exuberance and such. And so, and then when I finally got onto the bike path, it seemed like everyone I was passing was, acknowledging me, saying hi, or, thumbs up, or saluting, or, however they would usually kind of, say hi, or,
right.
And usually you may get maybe half the people to do that, half the people might, do that, but it seemed like everyone I was passing. And so I was kind of feeling good, about
Sure.
all that. And then I get to the end of the path, and it empties out into this sleepy little street. But this car comes, racing around the corner and slams on the brakes right in front of me. And I pulled out right in front of me, and I said, "Oh, you gotta be careful here. You know that name." So, and then the whole tenor started to change, because I would get onto this other bike path, and now everyone is, if they do look at me, they're staring at me like, with a puzzled look, like they're trying to figure out what's riding this bike, type of thing.
Wow.
And I remember one time there was a family of four, two bikes, and you just like the four sets of eyes are staring at you as you ride by, and such, and and all the, and now occasionally people wouldn't look, so they just drive by, but anyone who looked at me, they just had this stare and and puzzled look, and I was wondering, what are they seeing?
Right.
So it was really freaking me out, and no one said hi. It was all, if either ignored me or you stared at me.
Okay, but this all changed when this car screeched and just barely missed you.
Yeah. And so I get to the end of the path, and then turn around, and then go through the gate, and all of a sudden I'm thrown to the side of the path. I'm knocked down. And I go, what was that?
Right off the bike?
Yeah, I was thrown right off the bike, and then I see my bicycle seat with it's like 45 degrees off. I said, "Oh, it's a loose seat."
Yes.
But then I went to turn it, I couldn't turn it, that's pretty solid. And in fact, I had to, go to the gate and pound on it to get it, so I could ride it. So it was, super tight. So it wasn't that, but something had the force to move that bicycle seat 45 degrees off and knock me down. And then now, and I know one thing was, you can't be intimidated by these things. If it gets you to stop doing it, then, doing what you're doing, because I was kind of thinking maybe I should,
At this point, you had the name of this demon that you were going to use in the exorcism, right?
Exorcism, yeah. And
you're lucky you weren't killed.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking. So, but I said, well, okay. I mean, I'm sure it would have wanted me to, spill out onto the pavement and, be scraped up and everything.
Yes.
So, but I felt was protected. I did, it was a close call, but I was all right. But then I go about a mile, and there's a series of S-curves, and there's this guy, he's zooming, I mean, he's like all dressed up like Lance Armstrong. He's just focused, looking at the ground. He's pedaling as fast as he could through these series of curves, but he's right in my lane, coming straight toward me, not looking where he's going. And, and I was thinking to myself, do I get out of his way? But I didn't want to, get into a dance with him, and so I was about ready to jump off the bike, and he looks up and then gets out of the way. I go, oh man, that was almost a head-on collision. I mean, on a bike. I mean, wow. So, and then I go another mile, and we come to, there's these two mothers towing their babies in these little bike trailers. And so they go through the gate and line up on the street there, and then the other one comes through. They take up that whole area, and it's the only place where, there's a ditch on either side. So I don't go to that one. I couldn't get in between them. I go to the other side, and there's maybe about a foot or so to get around them as they're waiting for this car. And so, but I'm kind of shaking and such, and I just got thrown, off the side. I'm kind of praying, please don't throw me into their babies and such, silently. And the car passes, and then I do go around them, and then I hear them say, I'm sorry, because there was another bike coming across the street, but I think he had to stop right in the middle of the street so that one of them could get out of the way so he could get by. And so, but I was, thinking, okay, at least I didn't, that didn't happen.
Yes.
And so I go about another mile or two, and there's this mother with her little boy, maybe like 3 years old. He's pulling a plastic wagon behind him. They're in the other lane. And so I'm about ready to pass them. And all of a sudden, the boy decides to dart out in front of me. But luckily, the mother just as quickly grabs him and to not go, because if she didn't do that and he just would dart, I mean, I wouldn't go in front of him, but I would have to go behind him and hit his wagon and send him flying, or, send me flying and everything else.
At some point in all of this, Father, aren't you beginning to realize this is way not normal?
Yeah.
I mean, something's
this was I had 20 bullets, and I know I can't stop it, because if it knows I will stop at this point, it has the upper hand. It knows what will get me to stop. And so I have to keep on plugging along.
Yes.
And so, and then we come to, there's this bike tunnel under a very busy street, and it's kind of a narrow bike tunnel. And there's, it was, the last day, and so there was, either a set of kindergarten kids, they're small kids, or there's also a nursery kind of school, kitty corner on the other side. But as I was going down into this bike tunnel, and it was a bright sunny day, and so as my eyes are adjusting, I hear, get to the wall. And all of a sudden I see about 15 kids. Luckily, they all go to the one wall, and I could, get into the other lane and go past them all. And then I'm also hoping that another bike's not zooming down on the other side. And then and luckily there wasn't.
So you were headed straight for those kids.
Yeah. So, and luckily, and if the kids didn't, if they all went some went one way, some went the other way, some froze. I mean, it would have been disastrous. I mean,
Right.
I mean, really, I don't think I could,
couldn't have avoided them.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy, yeah. So it would have just something, and also if a bike was coming down the other side, I mean, we either would collide. I don't know. It would have really been tight mm-hmm. squeeze. So it was, and I got beyond that, and I was like, man, was that dangerous? Why would you? But luckily, the kids did obey their teacher and knew where to go and everything. I was like, oh boy, was that, and I go, man, luckily that was the last thing, because I don't remember anything. I mean, even seeing another person after that. So, but it was. I mean, it was.
That was plenty.
That was plenty. It was.
That's an incredible story. Okay, so you've got the name of this demon, and you've still got your life in your hands, barely. So there's one more exorcism coming, I take it, and this would be the one.
So this one I used the name. So before, so again, it was like nothing happened. Got to the, with the crucifix, nothing happened. And then I asked for its name, and nothing was said. Then I said, "Is your name such and such?" And then she began convulsing.
Wow. And
then once I had that, then I just kept on using that name over and over, and she got more and more, the convulsions got bigger and bigger, and then eventually they kind of lessened, and she fell asleep. And so that took care of that one.
That one. Have there been others since?
Yeah, so we kind of knew, okay, we took care of the, she never spoke, so we kind of knew, the kids would do these rhyming type of things. And so there was a speaking demon with the kids, also the levitating one or the throwing one, so we knew that one was still kind of there. And so, and since we had no other name, well, we did have another name. She kind of pointed it out.
All right, now you're confusing me a little. You exorcised the demon in her,
mm-hmm.
right? In mom. But even that done, you're saying the children still experienced.
Yeah, so the children were still experiencing, these things in there where they were at in the foster care and such.
Even there.
So we knew and she didn't manifest those. And so we decided to go to the Latin exorcism and the old rite. Let's just try that. And so when we did that one,
this was on the child. This was, on the child or children?
No, they were still locked up. They were still, away from her.
Yes.
So we're going to see if we wanted to get, them all out of her, so that, and then see if, then work on the children once we had access to them. And so the next plan was to do it in Latin, the old rite.
Okay, again, you're talking about Latoya?
With Latoya, yeah.
So when you got one demon out, you did that by name, the name you had retrieved, right? And and so that demon.
That one was out. That one was out, yeah.
But that wasn't the only one.
So there seemed to be, so she felt there was 6 of them in her, but we were kind of trying to identify them by personality, look at like what the kids did. So one would seem to make them do rhymes. One would throw them around. One would kind of, now we're not sure if the throwing around is with the levitating,
yes.
So those didn't manifest yet. So we thought we had to at least deal with those. And so we would do the one in Latin. Now, the interesting thing with the Latin one was I was the only one who knew Latin, and in fact, there was someone who would do the responses, but I had to train her how to phonetically do those responses. So she didn't know what she was saying; she was just saying it. And so what was interesting is, as long as you were praising God, it didn't bother this one. But when you started condemning it, then she would convulse again, and so. And it would know, and immediately when he went to praising God again, they would stop.
Did you have a name that you were after this time, or not?
No, I was just doing the Latin right. It didn't give me a name, but it was reacting. So, and then it was going back and forth, and that happened 3 times. And so I decided just to do the condemnation part of the right. And just attack the demon, because it just can't stand it. And so it got more and more violent, her convulsions, and then like before, then it finally dissipated, and then she finally fell asleep. And then when that was happening, I saw that she was trying to speak something, say something. Her mouth was moving, but nothing was coming out. And she also mentioned she felt like, did she lift up? She felt something was trying to lift her up. I said, no, we didn't see her lift, but she's not, it's in a church, so it's hard to get the energy that they need to do that. And also, she's a bigger woman, and a little different with a child. And so we weren't sure if those left or not, and so.
All right, I'll tell you what. We're right up against a break. We've got one more segment to go, Father. So take it easy. I'm sure this is not easy to talk about. Every time I think I'm hearing the end of the story, it's like a horror movie. There's more. It just keeps coming. But maybe that is the way it is in, do I want to say real life? Scary, scary stuff. I'm Mark Bell. This is Midnight in the Desert.
And again, we'll return to him for his final segment with Father Maginot as soon as the musical bumper subsides. Even if we do go long on tonight's final episode, we will stay with it until the interview is complete. Even if the video does go ahead and freeze for a little bit.
In the desert, let the phone ring until answered. These calls are unscreened for your listening pleasure. Call 1-952-CALL-ART. That's 1-952-225-5278.
Father Michael Maginot is my guest, and you've heard a description of pretty terrifying stuff. God, beginning to end, how it was detected, what was seen by any number of medical witnesses, how it progressed through one church and then finally to this Catholic priest, Father Maginot, and what he did. So, Father, is this where it ends? Is this the end of the story? I have thought that the story was ending any number of times, and then something awful happened again.
Yeah, so after the third one, we just would always set up for everyone present, when we could meet again, if need be. And so at that time, it was around 4th of July. And so so everyone had plans and, different things. So we're kind of working out when she could get back. The third was a possibility, or that Friday again.
Right.
And so, and we kind of got everyone's schedules so they could do, the third or that Friday. And I think the 4th was on a Thursday. So, so we were going to wait for her to let us know which day she preferred, if need be. And so she never called us back. And so there like no news is good news.
Right.
And so we never really heard from her. Next time I would hear from her was in October. She would give me a call that she's having her final hearing for her children, and to get them back, and if I could give her a rosary. And I said, oh, sure, okay. And I was kind of expecting to, see her after her hearing and then talk about how everything was going. But for some reason, she didn't even show up for the rosary, so I never heard anything until after the story broke, and I found out that she did get her children back. They had a big party in November, celebrating that, and that things have been fine ever since. And it seemed like it stopped, affecting the children after her final exorcism.
I see.
So,
I understand that you have no book, you didn't write a book, you have no website, but there are plans, apparently, to make a movie of this story. Is that correct?
Yeah, the documentary is in its final stages of completion. And that's with Zach Bagans doing in fact, he could almost do it in two parts. He has so much material, it's really hard to kind of keep it, because he wants to keep it to like a feature-length documentary, movie length, so 2 to 2.5 hours. But he's finding it very difficult to keep it get it down to that.
Right.
But, so that's in the plans, and also there was a plan for a movie, but that was Relativity was going to be the company doing it, and they went bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of opening up, for other companies to kind of get back into that picture there. But right now it's kind of tied up in the bankruptcy thing.
I see. Well, I can understand why they'd want to make a movie of it, that's for sure.
Yeah. So.
This rate's right up there. I mean, it unfolds slowly, but in the totality of the story, it is absolutely terrifying. One quick question. The, in quotes, boyfriend, what became of him, or did he just, disappear?
Yeah, Zach did try to interview him, and wanted to give him equal time and such if he wanted to dispute anything or whatever. And he wasn't interested. And I did say, most likely because he's probably possessed and would probably need an exorcism himself, and maybe even his wife. And if they wanted that, I would be willing to help them out that way.
Mm-hmm.
And Zach even proposed that to him, and he thought about it for a while, and then decided, against that, So he didn't come out kicking and screaming that, he's going to sue us, that we're defaming him or anything like that. So he seemed to consider what we were going to propose, but in the end, decided against it.
Is there anything else you wanted to get in that we didn't include in the interview? It was certainly a very detailed interview.
Mm-hmm.
Did we get it all in?
Well, there is also probably the other aspect, because it also affects the house. The house, it is kind of a perfect storm. And as I mentioned, the policeman discovered that there was the basement was poured concrete, but underneath the stairs it was broken, and it was sand. And so we were thinking, when I went and blessed the house and that, I didn't realize that was underneath the stairs. And so I said, we do need to see something's buried in there. So we need to figure what that is. And there is mention, because the Yamans would also be seeing kind of, there was the guy coming up and down the stairs with maybe the footprints. There was also the boy, the youngest boy was always talking to this other boy in the closet that only he would see.
Right, so did they dig?
And so we first of all got a dog, and the dog didn't react to anything. So we then started to dig, and about there seems to be 2 levels, about 2 feet deep and 2.5 feet deep. So the 2 feet deep would have meant the second thing that was buried, and it was coming up with things kind of relating to an older woman. First of all, the first thing we found was a fingernail, and we weren't sure if it's a real fingernail. We were thinking it was an applique, fake fingernail for a woman, but we weren't positive on that yet. And then the next thing we found was it looked like a pair of old woman's panties or a slip, some sort of undergarment.
Yes.
But it was kind of old. It was very plain as far as cottony. It was very sandy, but it was not a fancy thing. But it was kind of something that you kind of would think would be around the war, World War II or Depression era.
Right.
And then we found also the third thing was this red, looked like a top of a tea kettle. And we were looking for the container, but we didn't find anything there. So there was 3 objects that seemed to be to an older woman. Then we went about 2.5 feet deep.
Yes.
And then we found a pair of like boys' socks. And what was interesting, we didn't realize it till later, but when we saw it, it looked like the ankle portions of the sock, and the foot portion we thought was cut off. Later on, we would discover that actually the foot portion of the sock was tucked in underneath the ankle portion. And it was the ankle, it was, again, like a cottony sock that would be around the, 30s or 40s, very plain.
Listen, Father, at this point, I would be thinking somewhere under there is a body.
Yeah. So that's why the policemen were doing this.
I see.
Then the next thing we found was this weight. And it weighed about, it was heavy metal, 10 pounds or so, all corroded, been there a long time. Had a little hook-like thing at the top.
Yes,
We're trying to figure out what it was, and the thing is that weight to a grandfather's clock, but that house didn't seem like that kind of type, and it wasn't that big. And then they were kind of saying, the Gary policeman said, in these old houses, they used to, for the cord to open the drapes, they would put this weight on it and hold the cord down. And then the next thing we found, was this long brown thing. And now they were thinking, oh, this looks like a bone, and so they were going very carefully, taking pictures.
Yes.
And sweep, brushing and all this kind of stuff, going very easy on it. Then they kind of tapped it in some plastic-like, and so they pulled it up, and it looked like it's one of those old-time shoe horns, but it was, for some reason, was broken in half, lengthwise. And so we were kind of thinking that these look like objects that would be tied to necromancy, to conjuring up the dead,
Right.
And so the first thing that was buried was probably we were trying to find out if the house was built in 1926 and sold to a newlywed couple, and we were trying to find out if they ever had a boy, and we haven't been able to find that yet. we're maybe thinking if that's the boy that was appearing in the closet, and maybe he accidentally killed himself by, maybe twirling around that weight, and it caught him in the head, or went off the wall and knocked him out, or wrapped around his neck, or something like that, and choked him. So that might have been the thing that killed him, and with his socks and tied to the feet type of thing. So, and the other one could have been either the woman's mother, because the kids also, when they came off the bus one time and coming home from school, they saw this old lady in their backyard, and they came and they were walking back to her and going to ask her, "What are you doing in our backyard?" And when she turned around, she had red eyes. and so they ran into the house and got their mother and grandmother, and they came running out, and she wasn't there. And a second time they saw the woman in the backyard, and they came running into the house to try to get their mother to go out there, and again it was missing. So there seemed to be three human ghost-like figures tied to the house as well. So it's kind of a perfect storm.
Does that house now stand alone? Is there somebody living in it now, or what's become of it?
Zach Bagans bought the house, and it is interesting. He kind of boarded it up because it's very active, and in fact, he was doing some filming on it this past winter, and one of the cameramen ended up seeing this goat head thing, and he quit and he went back to he gave up on the project.
It's amazing. Have you, Father, stopped doing exorcisms, or have you now done others? I mean, I guess you've done it once, and people know you have done them. Mm-hmm. You probably get requests for them, don't you?
Yeah, so I did do three others.
Three?
Beside that one.
Each one you went to, did you go back to the bishop?
Yeah, so each one. All four were approved by the bishop. The one was tied to the house. So that one I had permission for, anything with that house I have permission for. But the other two were two separate people, two separate cases.
Mm-hmm. I have never heard. I've never heard anything like this story, Father. It's just amazing. I don't know what to say about it. There's very little I can say about it. It is what it is, and what it is sounds to me like clearly possession.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly, do you think it's completely gone, Father, or are you still concerned?
No, we're still concerned because, in fact, when after the cameraman incident, he boarded up the house.
Right.
He didn't want anyone there messing with it. And now we recently did some more filming, so they unboarded it. And when they walked inside, they saw no one has been in there since the wintertime, and so there's dust on this table. But then there's this handprint with long fingers.
It just never ends, does it?
And also, there was this hole in the ceiling, and so they were thinking some animal, like a raccoon or something, must have dug a hole. It knocked all the debris and such to the ground, and all kinds of water and mold and everything kind of got in there. And they were looking for the animal that would have done that, and they couldn't find anything. And they didn't see any exit. It didn't climb up the wall again. So it either just, for some reason, dug a hole in the roof so that the water could get all in. So, so the house is kind of ruined now. You know?
Father, as I said way back in the show, I would imagine something of this magnitude would be an affirmation of your faith. Yes?
Yes.
I want to thank you for being on the program. It has been incredible to hear the story online. Just absolutely incredible. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome, sure. Thank you.
Good night, Father. Wow. You just heard a story of possession and exorcism. The real thing. Okay. That one got to me. Tomorrow we will do open lines of some description. I don't know what it's going to be. I'll pray on it. Good night, everybody. Searching for the truth. Will we make it to tomorrow? Will the sun...
And with that, we leave Midnight in the Desert for tonight, finishing off with Father Michael Maginot with exorcisms. We definitely thank you for that. Alrighty, so with that, we will bring part 3 to a close for the evening. As always, please do like, share, and subscribe. Get us to those goals of both Boxy Nexters of 5,000 viewers on the videos and 1,000 subscribers. And by the way, congratulations, and we do welcome the newest subscriber to our channel. We are always happy when we do pick up a new person in the From Day One party. Of course, CoinBase below to get your free crypto. And of course, then even more afterwards beyond through the CoinBase Learn. Less than 2-minute lessons, 1 question quizzes. Get yourself $100 in crypto to use here in Dominion. Until we do meet tomorrow to go ahead and rock the Dominion way once again, please be kind to one another. May all your fights win in Dominion. And join us again tomorrow, as it's always a great new world to release the Krakens here on day one. On From Day One.